Welcome everyone to Bo's Bros. Today we have a special treat. Not only are we going to a car show, we are going to the car show for Mopar enthusiasts. We're going to the Carlisle Fairgrounds in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, where they have the Chrysler Nationals this weekend. Chrysler, Plymouth, Dodge from all eras are invited. There's going to be thousands of vehicles, thousands of vendors. The CEO from Chrysler is going to be there. Steve Dulcich is going to be there. A bunch of people from the community will be there. ebodies.org, a forum I use all the time to research our CUDA. That whole community is going to be there. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to see if we can find some classic cars, maybe some interesting people, and yeah, just have a good time. Carlisle 2025 opened up by walking through the front gate and immediately seeing rows and rows and rows of parts and cars for sale. And people who, I mean, if we're honest, are asking a little bit too much for what they were offering. I imagine the last day of Carlisle, you'll see a lot of these prices come down as people have to decide if they want to lug all the stuff back and try again next year. Some of them will, but invariably, I think some people will end up selling the stuff for much less than what you see here. If I didn't have to fly back to Arizona, I would seriously consider picking up a couple things for myself. Our 72 CUDA actually needs a new clutch, and 4-speed Mopars has a presence here as well. Passon, however you pronounce it, their 4-speed A3 88 transmissions are here, and they sell a bunch of clutch parts as well. They walked me through a little bit of what's needed to replace the clutch on our CUDA. If I didn't have to figure out how to fit a clutch into my carry-on, I might have picked one up and brought it home today. Once we were done looking at the parts, we made our way to the grandstands. If you've never been, the grounds are massive. From my understanding, this is the Carlisle Fairgrounds, and they do a bunch of automotive events throughout the year. This Mopar event, from what they said over the loudspeaker, was the biggest one they've had to date. So over 3,200 vehicles, just show vehicles, let alone the attendees. And the attendees brought their own vehicles that were pretty cool as well. The grounds are massive. Bring some good walking shoes if you want to attend. We finally made our way to guest services. The kids got goodie bags. I didn't expect it to be quite as kid-friendly as it was. Now, admittedly, my boys are more into this kind of thing than maybe your average little kids would be. So they maybe have a little bit more patience for the walking around and the talking to people than I think your average kid would, because they genuinely care about this stuff as well. So that being said, it's still a lot of walking. If I were to do it again, I'd probably bring our own shade, our own wagon or a stroller or something, just for the kids to take a break every now and then. The whole day was pretty kid friendly. Everyone was excited to see the boys and talk to them and share goodie bags and Hot Wheels, and let the boys sit in the vehicles. Even the cars that were off limits, they'd invite the boys over to come sit and take pictures. It was pretty cool. Our first stop was the Kids' Choice. There was an indoor area that had a couple rows of vehicles for the kids voting. My personal favorite was this yellow Viper. The kids were drawn to a couple of the older vehicles. I think some of the participants cheated a little bit by inviting the boys to sit in their vehicles and reminding them over and over which number vehicle they were sitting in. It was pretty fun though. Next we made our way to the concessions, and I have to say I was pleasantly surprised. The food wasn't really overpriced. You know, being here at the fairgrounds, I was expecting it to be more, but it really wasn't bad at all. And in this tent there were strictly Survivor Mopars. So these are vehicles that effectively have been unchanged since they left the factory. Now, because these vehicles are now 50 plus years old, a lot of them are restorations or resto mods, which are cool in their own right. But Survivor vehicles are very unique and increasingly rare because they have not been modified, they've not been repainted, the interior, everything is all original or very, very close to original, and not replaced by an original looking replacement piece. Like, those are the actual parts that were on the vehicle when it came off the assembly line. So seeing these vehicles here, the better part of a century later, and seeing them mostly intact, like, it's really neat to see. We then made our way to the rows of show vehicles, and man, it is something to see. Again, if you're really into this kind of stuff, it is like a dream come true. My son called it Challenger Heaven because we look down this row of cars and it's really as far as the eye can see. You have rows and classic Challengers on either side of the road all the way down. It's pretty cool. And of course, they have more than Challengers there. The E-bodies have a really impressive showing. The Barracudas and the Challengers, of course, were a little bit biased there, having a CUDA of our own. It is a shame that the muscle car era came to a close when it did because, no pun intended, there was a lot of gas left in the tank, and the Challenger and Barracuda are two examples of that. They came out in 1970, which was just a little bit too late. The Charger was cool and all, but it was a little bit too big to compete with the likes of the Camaro and the Mustang. I think for every one Barracuda that was sold, they sold like 50 Mustangs or something like that. Mustangs are relatively cheap just because they're so abundant, but a CUDA only shows up every once in a blue moon, and so they demand a higher asking price. Maybe that's why I'm attracted to them more so, is just that they're rare, and I don't know, I just get excited when I see one. The Barracuda in its first and second generation was based on the Valiant. The third generation Barracuda came out alongside the Challenger in 1970 and only lasted 4 model years. That was wider and shorter and longer, increasing insurance costs, regulations, safety bumpers, and fuel prices all contributed to muscle cars, frankly, just not being very popular and not selling well. What's wild is in the late 70s and early 80s, you can pick up a shining example of one of these vehicles for cents on the dollar, and it now would demand, possibly 6 or 7 figures. Coronets and the Roadrunners and the Satellites and the Chargers. If you're into classic Mopar muscle, there's really no better place to be. We, of course, saw all the new vehicles as well. Lots of modern Challengers and Chargers. They had a big presence here. If I had to guess, the bulk of those 3,200 vehicles were probably modern Mopar. But yeah, people are passionate about their vehicles, try to do some cool stuff to get attention and get the kids excited. The kids actually really loved this Bumblebee themed Challenger. They also had a drawing for a cash grab. They had kids bingo. One of my boys won bingo and won a prize there, so that was pretty neat. Overall, I was impressed by how welcoming they were to kids. People go out of their way to talk to the boys and ask them about their favorite cars, and it was neat. It was a cool experience. Again, if I didn't have to lug all this stuff across the country, I probably would have come home with a few more things than I did. You got a couple pieces of literature. I got some die-cast models for the boys and some Hot Wheels. And honestly, a lot of the stations were giving things away. Participants were just giving things away to the kids. Even if they weren't explicitly free, they would just invite the boys over and let them pick something out for free. That was really positive. I wasn't expecting that. And of course, I had to stop and take a picture of this Dakota convertible we've talked about on the podcast before. I don't know how many of these were made. I'll probably put it on the screen, but pretty rare and awesome to see. This is the first time I've ever seen one. If I didn't have my boys with me, I would have made my way over to the exhaust and burnout competition. They had a competition for burnouts and donuts and things like that. The boys don't like excessively loud noises. Obviously you're going to a car show, there's going to be people revving their engine, and that's fine and all, but they're a little bit sensitive to those loud noises, so we skipped that. But had I gone on my own, I probably would have checked that out. A lot of walking today. The grounds are really big. They're not spread out. Everything's fairly compact. There's just so much to see. I'm sitting down now because my legs are tired. Well, we had a great time at Carlisle. It was a first-time experience for my boys and I. First for everything, actually. Being from Arizona, this kind of heat and humidity it's a lot. It takes a lot of getting used to. When we decided to end our day, it immediately started to rain, torrential rain. So I'm glad we got out of there when we did. A lot of things to see. As Mopar guys, there's really no better place to go. Rows and rows of parts and cars and things to look at, people to talk to, really interesting people who really know their stuff and know their Mopar history. 2 big thumbs up for anyone who has a passion for Mopar automobiles, Dodge, Chrysler, Plymouth. It's kind of like a candy store. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you appreciated this review of Carlisle 2025, and we'll catch you in the next one.